life.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining Essence of History. What is time?
I'm Dr. Abbasi, and I will bring my not medical expertise to the table.
My name is Alyssa Haber.
My name's Misha.
And Misha is going to actually moderate us right from this table and fact check us. Make sure that we are just telling you things that are true. Now, Amanda, you asked me to title this Essence of Science. What is time?
Yeah.
But I ask you to do it Essence of History. What is time? Do you have a good understanding why I ask you to do that?
Well, I did watch your TikTok, so I understand now why you wanted it to be Essence of History, because you want to talk about the history of time.
History of time, meaning that how did we come to even keep time? Now, I'm older than both of you together, and it was a time that I did not have a watch. And my parent, they lived, or mostly they could have lived their entire life without a watch. And Misha, and I know that, in China, keeping time has been a big deal. And do you remember a time that, you didn't have a watch, or your parent, or did you ever, you are much younger, but did you always have a watch?
No, not really. We sometimes have clocks, but not the watch all the time.
Yeah, and it was a time that, actually I didn't even have a calendar. I didn't have, schedule, all my schedule crazy it is now, that you actually helping me to reconcile 15 different calendar so that I am in the right places and so on. But why do we need time? Start today. What did you guys do today that required actually for you to be on time? Let's start.
Waking up in time for work was one.
So what happens if you come to work like an hour later?
I have more work to do. I have to rush myself.
Yeah, but you could literally come to work an
Me
hour later.
personally, yeah,
you
you
could.
know.
I can't, because 10 other people are waiting
Yeah.
for me. So you already, expressed that. What happens, Alyssa, when you are my PA and everybody in the OR is waiting for us, and you're just 1 hour late, like Amanda, you're just 1 hour late, and you just make your hair do and so on, and you come to work. And what do you think what will happen there?
Well, if I was in your shoes, I would definitely have a stern talking to my employee that shows up an hour late. I think there's consequences when it comes to time management in situations that involve other people's time as well.
Synchronizing it with other people.
Yeah.
That is when the keeping time really matters. Because if you're a farmer, and for thousands of years we have been farmers, we are just throwing the seeds on the ground, we let them grow up. It was important, and really what time of the day it is wasn't really important.
Well, for farming, it's a little bit important.
How so?
Well, you can't plant, well, you can, but if you plant something at peak sunrise, it's a little bit more difficult for the plant.
Do you need a watch for that?
You need just to look at the sky.
No, you just need to wake up and just go and throw it. You don't need a watch for that.
Well, as someone who has chickens,
You-
you do need to watch the time, because this morning I went out to my chicken coop. I thought I didn't need to collect my eggs every day, and I went out this morning and my eggs were frozen and cracked.
Okay. And did anybody ever told you, are your eggs going to freeze if you don't collect them?
I wasn't open for opinions at the time.
So it was a time, just let's put it there, that it did not matter anything if you had a watch or not. You
Yeah.
didn't need a watch to live. But what was important is that when you're putting your seed in, is it in the next month, is it going to still freeze or not? So the astronomical time calendar was important, so you know when to put the seeds in the ground and when is the best time to take it out before everything goes bad. And that was the agricultural kind of time frame. And that was for almost thousands of years. That was it. In that time frame, people to understand when to put their seeds in, and later on it was important that the the king or pharaoh knew what time of the year is it. People are taking their grains out. When can I go and ask for my tax? And the tax was a fraction of their practically whatever they were farming, grains. Okay, and that is even in the Bible, about in the Old Testament, about that, how much it was and how they collected it and so on and so forth. So keep needing actual time is something that we need only when we become industrialized, that one action led to another action right away. Do you know when it was that we really needed time? In 17th and 18th century, just few hundred years, that we are really in need of keeping time. And do you know what made us that we really need synchronized clocks? Who can guess that? Misha, what do you think? When did we start truly needing synchronized clock? Because for thousands of years, or at least for 1,000 years, each city, each village has its own time. They had a sundial that would tell you, and in that time, they actually, the day, doesn't matter how long the day was divided in 12 hours with the sundial. So if you have a long day in summer versus a short day in winter, it was 12 section of that. So it wasn't really 1 hour in northern hemisphere wasn't the same as 1 hour in the equator. So Misha, when do you think that we start truly need to synchronize our clocks and be the same, that our hours are the same like the next village, like the next village?
I think that has something to do with like an atomic clock, something.
But that is much, much later.
That's much
Atomic
later.
clock was 1970s.
Oh.
But it was a time that, and I'm going to give you a clue. Albert Einstein was a patent officer in Zurich to truly keep the patent for these devices to keep the time synchronized for one reason. It was important for one reason. Imagine, you want to guess, Alyssa? No?
I've got a lot of things going through my mind, but I can't.
Throw something out there. Most of the time it's right.
It's probably not right, but my
Go ahead.
first thought is the main reason why I would feel like the villages need to stay on the same time is for corresponding reasons. Whether it was that was when different governments came up different.
You're right. You're right. No, but see, in that time frame, in 1980s, and 1980, and
18 or 19?
no, in 1900, like
Okay.
120 years ago, in 1850, 70.
Sorry.
What?
You keep saying 1918, 1918.
Yeah.
I'm getting so confused.
Okay.
When?
Wake up. So, what would
When was
correspond
it, though?
in 1860s, 1870s? Okay. Or even before that in the 1780s, but it was really a big problem in 1860s and 70s. What would go from one town to another all the time? Because that's the only thing that you have to synchronize. But you're right, you have to correspond. They have to something that when you say you're going to be there, somebody is there to expect you. What was going from one town to another in 1870, 1860s?
Horses.
Horses, but
Telegram?
horses. Huh?
Telegram.
That came much later.
Later?
That came much later. And that's not dangerous. If you say, I'm going to send it to you, it can be dangerous. If you weren't synchronized, you could kill people. Trains.
Oh.
Yes. You have, it's expensive. You put one track, okay? One train going one way. They need to know when this train is going to be here in a separate place, so the next train can pass on the same track, the opposite direction. If you don't synchronize that, you can kill people. So it was important that the train that going one way versus the train coming other way, they know exactly timetable, what is my time, what's your time, and they don't hit each other. So.
Sure.
Isn't that amazing? It has been only 150 years that we need to know what minute and what second it is. Before that, there was no need for that. Yes, you could say, in Iran, it's actually, this is famous. We say we Persian people, we don't have any concept of time. You accuse me of that all the time.
I do.
I don't know, maybe somebody else does, but it is in a way true, because at least my generation, it was something special to have a watch. I remember when I had my first watch, I was checking on that all the time, even though it meant nothing to me. I could be 1 hour later or anything, or if you would tell to a friend you will be seeing them, you would just say the day and what time of the day, in the morning, in the afternoon, or evening. You wouldn't say what time. Imagine your friends are telling you they're going to come and see you, and the closest you can say is, let's say, a Friday evening. That's the closest you get there. You still could work around that problem. But here in the West, we don't do that anymore. We want to know what time you are going to be there, because I'm going to do 5 different things before you come, and so on and so forth. So, but let's talk. So, calendar was important in the agricultural age. Before that, calendar was meaningless. If you're hunter and gatherer, it is really not really important to you. In winter, you get like deer. In summer, you get deer and other thing, and so on. You gather and whatever it's out there. In the agricultural age, the astronomical calendar is important, so you don't waste your seeds.
Sure.
So let's talk about the history of the concept of the calendar.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
Alyssa, what calendar are we using today?
If I knew the actual name, I'd tell you. To me, this is the only calendar I've ever known. I realized that before
It has a name, though.
it got to somewhere, but I'm gonna call it the Americanized calendar, even though I know
Good.
it's universal for the most
Yeah.
part. But
But it's not as universal as you would think, right?
It's not universal at all.
When I learned that, my mind was just completely blown that here in the US it's 2023 almost.
right,
But whereas in Iran, what year
It's
is it?
1400.
wow,
Isn't that just mind blowing?
But as well in Iran, the calendar is not the months you use
They
here.
do moon calendar, right?
No, that's the
That's
Arabs.
China.
That's
Oh, well, that's
China
China.
and Arab.
In China, we
And I'm
use
going to
lunar
tell you-
calendar.
and I'm going to tell you how it
Persians
came to
do
China.
Persians do stars,
Persian do stars, yeah.
and we
So,
do sun.
but let's talk about our current calendar. Everybody, you're sitting home. Today is
The day before Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving Eve.
Happy Thanksgiving to everybody. But this calendar that we are using is called Gregorian calendar.
Yep.
And the monks, Gregorian monks, actually invented that because the previous calendar to that wasn't good enough. As a matter of fact, when we switched from previous calendar, Roman calendar, to Gregorian calendar, we had to omit about 15 days. For that reason, George Washington has 2 birthdays. One with the old calendar, Roman calendar, one with the Gregorian calendar, because we have to, and for a long time, Europe and America had different calendar because one of them started to accepting that calendar later on. Misha, do you know why those calendars are so different? Why did they jump from 15th of February to 1st of March about 160 years ago? Why did they do that?
I have no idea. Really?
The answer to that is, do you like your birthday to be 29th of February?
No, because you get birthday every 4 years.
Every 4 years. So, and it's something to do with the, how do you call the concept of that? Sometimes
Leap year.
leap year. So the Gregorian calendar practically corrected something that the previous calendar didn't have. That how many days is how long is a year?
365 days.
365.25.
Pretty good. I'm very impressed. Very close. Is actually
About as close as you can almost get.
Yeah.
But
it is actually 365 days. I think 6 hours or 5 hours, and then certain minutes and certain second. Okay.
so let's just round to 6 hours so I can get a fourth.
Yeah.
and-
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
And that is exactly what they did. How did they know that? You see, how you cannot really know regarding the sun where you are always. It's not accurate enough. But if you look at the distant star, and you always see the distant star, you can actually, you see that the position of that star always changes during the year because you are moving. But at certain time, that certain star, let's take North Star, will be always in the same place. So that's called the celestial or year, meaning that you go around the earth and see when are you back, that you're looking at this at certain time at a certain star. That certain time a certain star is practically how long it takes for the sun, for the earth to go one time around the sun. And that is the 365 days, 6 hours, certain minutes, certain second. Guess what? In Iranian calendar, Persian calendar, that is where the year changes from one to another. Now, you guys have heard about the astrological, like zodiac signs, right?
Yep.
So, what do you know about zodiac calendar?
Well, it's based on the stars.
Yeah. Well, what sign are you?
I'm an Aquarius.
What are they famous for?
Being
I'm Aquarius
famous.
also.
Being famous.
Being
Perfect.
Perfect.
being really cool, really nice.
Oh yeah.
You're an Aquarius too, right?
Yes, I'm Aquarius also.
Asian
I
Aquarius.
think it's just being whimsical, I guess.
That makes sense.
So what are you?
I am a Virgo.
Virgo.
Okay.
Okay.
We
What
know. We
Heads
have.
up.
What
we
are
have,
Virgos famous for?
We're famous for being, I don't know, toxic, a little,
Spicy.
What?
yeah, a little spicy, a little,
Okay.
Strong.
yeah, strong.
Virgos are very strong.
When I think of Virgos, I don't necessarily think of myself. Like, I don't feel like I embody what I think of a Virgo.
Mhm.
But I have seen several Virgos that do fit that.
Okay.
So,
But I'm going to tell you something. Go to one of those that like in magazine and so on, those description, if you're this and that. Just do a double blind study. Change those description and mix it up, and it makes no difference. So those things, as a scientist, I can tell you there is no validity in those description. They say that Amanda is not happy
Well,
about
no,
that.
I'm not. It's not that I'm not happy about it. It's just I'm thinking of like Anna, if you're watching, I'm thinking about Pisces, and I don't want to put any Pisces slander out there, but I would say that that sign is pretty accurate.
Yeah. So, but there is something that does apply. The first few months of your life, depending on how much sun or cold or warm you get, it seems that it has influence on your personality.
I've actually heard that in some countries, when your baby is sick, people will put their baby out in the sun to heal it.
Yeah. So meaning that people who are born like me in
You see
Yeah.
that?
fall and
yeah.
it's becoming cold, they're more prone, not that high, of a statistical correlation, but they're more to be prone to be melancholic if the first few months of their life they don't get enough sun and so on. So there's some validity on that part, might be, but not what that you can. The star don't say your future.
sure.
You determine your
That's,
future.
that's tough. I guess from my side of things is how much sun I see in September is different than how much sun they see in Florida.
Yeah.
So someone
That
that's
is
a
a good
Virgo
one.
in
Yeah.
Florida will have sun for 2 months of
Yeah.
their life and still be a Virgo, whereas being from the Midwest in September, it's hit and miss on how much sunlight you actually get.
Yeah.
So I'm not getting as much as the rest of the Virgos around the world.
And-
So,
True, especially in September.
right.
But have you noticed that the Scandinavian are just different people than the Italian? Like in Italy, the doors are open, people are loud. Where in Scandinavian, you have a distance, you're keeping away from people, doors are closed because it's cold.
Yeah.
So this personality based on the geography is very, very accurate.
Sure.
There's a reason that in Italy, people just walk to your house, doors are open, windows are open. Most of the life is outside, whereas in colder places, doors are closed, windows are closed. So these are accurate description, but coming back to that that may have an impact on those zodiac. By the way, those zodiac signs are where you see certain constellation in the sky depending on the time of the year, and that can accurately estimate the time of the year. And that is important because before we were good at reading those zodiac signs in the sky, and by the way, these are just northern things. People in southern hemisphere, they didn't have any of this. But the good news is that for most of the history, most of the civilization has happened north of the equator. So the zodiac sign that you see, they could predict when it's going to get cold, when it's going to start raining, so they were accurate. But before that, we were used to use moon calendar.
Yep.
Do you want to describe what moon calendar is? At least what you are having in China?
So in China, like the year were divided into 24, like I would say time stops. Like each one of them has their own name, and some of them are pretty self-explanatory. Like we have the small code, the big code, the like, and most of them have to do with agriculture, like indication of like what do you have to do at this point. Like there's a time, it's called like autumn harvest. There's like a morning, no, like a spring when you like put the seed in the soil, and yeah.
So,
That actually brings up a question for me.
mhm.
You know how we have new moon, full moon, we also have the harvest moon and the blood moon.
Okay.
I was wondering if the blood moon has any, like the harvest
Yes.
moon would obviously have to do with harvest, but I wonder if the blood moon has to do with like when the animals are at that age.
So everybody thinks the moon has the same distance to the earth or earth has the same distance to the sun. That's not the case. The orbits are elliptical. So at certain time, moon is closer to earth, and at those times when the moon is very close to earth and it just goes around the horizon, all the other colors of the sun reflection to the moon get absorbed except the lower frequency, which is the red. That is why your tail light is red, and because that is you can see it farthest. And that is the blue blood moon is practically the reflection of the sun to the moon when it's closest to the earth and right above the horizon where it has to go through lots of atmosphere. All the colors get absorbed except the red one.
Okay.
No blood in it. Sorry.
I'm not,
Okay. No werewolf.
don't worry.
So, but let's come back to that. What is the problem with the moon circle around the earth? How long is that?
Moon circling the earth, like a month,
Like a month, but not exactly.
shorter or longer than a month.
28 days.
Oh,
That's how long it takes for the moon to go full circle around the earth. 28 days.
does the moon orbit, is it a perfect circle or is it
No, it is
elliptical?
not. It is as well elliptical. Yeah.
Mhm.
So a perfect circle almost doesn't exist in nature because nature tries everything, and perfect circle is one of many millions of possible circles around the gravity. So, but you see that there, if the moon calendar is 28, 12 months, doesn't really put us right around the sun. So we have to compensate for that. How do they compensate in Chinese calendar for the lag, so that now the fall or when you harvest is not going to be always at the same time? How do they compensate for that?
I'm not so sure because lunar calendar is not like widely used these days.
But it used to be widely used.
Yeah,
Because
maybe
you-
by my parents or their grandparents,
Yeah.
but not when I grow up.
Now, what do you need to estimate the calendar? You need something that repeats itself. Okay, the sun up, sun down repeat itself regularly. Position of the sun, you can put a stick and see the shadow. You see where the shadow it's long, it gets shorter, and then it gets long again. So actual noon, it's easy to determine anywhere. By the way, if you want to see where the north and south is or east and west is, literally put a stick in the ground, 15 minutes, point the end of a shadow on the ground, and then 15 minutes later, then you see that direction east to west, and obviously
East
sun.
to west.
That obviously sun goes from rises in east, goes to west, meaning that the shadow goes the opposite direction. Okay.
Sure.
Okay. So that we can determine. Days we can determine, but everything else, one time around the thing, you need to know the astrology. You need to know astronomy. You need to look at the stars and so on. You can look at the moon. It's easy. Moon is big, 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 getting bigger, then getting smaller, getting bigger, then getting smaller. And what?
They're just funny.
So
I kind of like that. I
Yeah.
wish if all months were 28 days and they
Yeah.
followed the same cycle, and
Yeah.
the new moon was the first of the month and the 15th was the full moon, and I think that would be nice.
that would be
Kind of
nice.
nice.
Cute.
What do we need to do that? If we push the moon about 10% more out, it becomes slower. Then, and that is going to happen in the next 2.5 billion years. Moon is going to go farther away, they will synchronize at that time. But that time, sun has engulfed the Earth, and we are not around, so we don't care anymore then. But it's going to take, in that time frame, the moon is going to be farther. Moon is going to need longer to go around the Earth, and the solar moon and the lunar moon will synchronize. Did you know? And as well, Earth is going to become slower. So a day is going to be longer. So
Depending on where you live.
no.
Don't
See,
you think?
okay, about 4.5 billion years ago, and the planet size of the Mars hit the Earth. A big chunk of the Earth flung out and made the moon. How do we know that? Because when they brought those moon samples from Apollo 11 and so on, they analyzed the moon crust and the Earth crust are identical, and that's the only way it can be. When it happened, a day on Earth was 6 hours. We would see the sun going up and down every 6 hours. And then, because of the tidal energy...
How do they know that?
How do we know that? Because there are certain, first of all, there are certain things, stones and so on, that they crystallize in certain way, and we know that first of all, the Earth crust and the Moon crust are the same. There are certain crystals that they can keep time in some way, and we know they happen to be created at the same time on both Earth, identical on Moon.
No, the 6-hour day. How can we?
It's a mathematical calculation that we know the Earth and the Moon have to be close to each other. Like, let me tell you something. When they went to Moon, they put the reflective things on the surface of the Moon. Now we throw a laser on it, and it comes back to us. Moon is distancing itself from us every year about 0.5 inch. Every year, Moon is 0.5 inch farther from us. So that is energy that the system is losing. It's not really losing. That is all the energy of the tidal wave, the flood and so on. When the Earth's surface goes up and down the oceans and so on, that energy of this motion transfers to or practically oceans at the rate of 1 centimeter, whole mass of the Moon moving 1 centimeter away from us. So, and now we know that because we put a laser on the Moon and we are measuring that. Now you turn the clock back. 4.5 billion years ago, Moon was half of the sky. And so we calculate that this system, this is a so-called the traditional Newtonian system. You calculate if these two masses are so close to each other, how fast they will rotate. So it's a beautiful mathematical calculation, and we will talk about that. Essence of science mathematics in a different thing, how you can calculate these things. But okay, but we are now. A day is that much. We can measure the noon, we can measure Moon going around the Earth and so on, but it doesn't synchronize. And you plant it because you think it's the right time to plant, and all your plants die, and you have to do something about it. You measure. Then that is how they came out with the celestial kind of calendar. you look at the distant star, and then you can be accurate. Of Arab calendar was as well moon calendar, and the way they compensate for that, they measure how bad it is, and then they just add so many days before the season or start for that. So the calendar is the same, but the season doesn't always start at a certain point. It's that like this year's season start at 15 of this month. The next year's season start at 15 of this month plus 15.
Is there like an authority or like some people to decide at the beginning of the year or at the end of the year?
So you see, for most of the human history, people who had this saying in that, there were people who collect tax. And who were there? Who collected tax for thousands of years? Churches and governments. And so they, as a matter of fact, the Catholic Church was the big deal in establishing this Gregorian calendar is a Catholic calendar. Okay, and before that as well, the calendar they used before, it was a church calendar. And then before that, it was the Caesarian or the Roman calendar. But they couldn't calculate the leap years well. So a Gregorian calendar calculate the leap year, and that goes that if it's divisible by 4, hence 6 hours,
Right.
you add another leap year every 4 years, except if it's 1600, except if it's something like a round number, because it's not exactly 6 hours, it's a little less than that. Okay, so and that is how we calculate keeping calendar, and that's important. So for thousands of years we just lived with that. That was enough. You know, when you put your soil, water your soil, put the seed in, and you know it's time to pay taxes. But then it came to that two things. Religious people, they had to pray. They need to know what time to pray. Okay, at least you know, you don't get killed if you don't pray on time. But then you have trains, they're driving on the same tracks. That could have been deadly. Now, how do you think in China they kept time, the hours? Now, by the way, this when you count things, even if you're a little child, you count with your fingers, right? Most of people have 10 fingers, right? Most people. And that is how we count. In most of the society, we count on base of 10. And we think that's the only way to count, but that's not the only way to count. Most of our understanding of counting comes from Babylonian, from Mesopotamia, and they count the number of the joint in your finger. And this finger, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. But they didn't count it like us, because the way I'm counting is the base of 10 count. They just had different names and so on. So 12. Why 12? Why? As a matter of fact, some mathematicians, some people say we should count like that. This is a better way of counting. Why? Why do you think it's better to count base of 12 than base of 10?
12 into 10.
You get chocolate. Who wants a chocolate bar? You get a chocolate bar if you tell me why is it 12 is better than 10. Imagine for thousands of years, we, in the essence of mathematics, or essence of mathematics, we'll talk about that. For thousands of years, we didn't have the concept of zero. We didn't have like, you get the 2.5 of this herd, and you get another 2.5, and so on and so forth. But we have known fraction for a long time. You get half, you get half. You get 1/4, you get 1/4. And 12 has more fractions, integer fraction, than 10. 10 has only 2, 5 and 2.
5 and 2.
Whereas 12 has
6, 2, 3, 4.
Here you are. And that is much better. If you don't have the base of 10 and comma, decimal places, that's much better. And they did even better. They used the knuckles, and then once you went through one knuckle, one finger went up. And then another, 5. 5 times 12, 60. So here you are, you're getting closer to why It's based of 12, why 12 months, 12 apostles, 12 this, 12 that. 12 is an important number.
I'm really happy that you brought that in because sometimes I'm a little weary to bring like religion into some things, but from my past and history, I know that there are considered, special numbers in the biblical side of things, and 12 is one of them.
Yes.
And so when you asked like why 12, and I instantly went back to biblical times with 12
and Babylonian.
being, 12 being a special number.
And that knowledge went from two places, from Egypt and Babylonian. Like in Egypt, they had these celestial stars and so on. In Babylonian, they had this numbers method. And do you know who spread all of that in the entire world, known world? Somebody who went first to Egypt, then to Babylon. Do you know who that was?
There are so many.
No, it is very famous. The
Is
most
Jesus?
important, no,
Not
that was
Jesus.
long before Jesus. Who was the person that very famous, has a name of great attached to it?
Caesar.
Alexander the Great.
Alexander the
Oh,
Great.
Good.
Alexander the Great
Like famous.
first went to Egypt, conquered that, then went to Babylonia and conquered that, and brought that knowledge all the way to East India, and it spread to China from there. To our best knowledge, the base of 10 and that counting months and so on, hours of the day, that is how it spread across the world because it works. Now, let's talk about, so we talked about the calendar, what time of the year. Now, what time of the day? How did they in Egypt and in later on in China, but later on in China, they invented their own way, how they divided the hours. And the hours were literally 10 hours a day, 1 hour sundown at the twilight at the end of the day, 1 hour the twilight at the beginning of the day, so 12 hours. And it didn't matter. Now the good news is like we would be screwed here because like in 1 month, sun goes up what time in December?
Like 7.
But it goes
8.
down at like 4.
8.
At 4. So you see, but in summer, our sun goes down it's up at 4 and it goes down at 10.
Yeah.
So there's a huge difference. But in Egypt, it's so
It's more
close to
central.
it's more central. So the days and night over the year they're not that different, but still different, but not that much. Okay, but they divided the day in 12 hours, and then they wanted to know what time, what hour. That is all what they did. What hour of the day it is. How did they do that?
So in China, there's like it's divided in 12 sections. It's just it's kind of like the same as the animal zodiac that the Chinese use. Like they're like mouse, cow, and tiger or something. But before, like there's a word combination. It's called like 子鼠丑牛寅虎卯兔. So 鼠 is like mouse, but 子 is like the first character that describe the first 2 hours of the day. So a day is divided into 12 parts, and every part is like 2 hours.
Okay, so but how did they measure it?
I don't know, maybe with a sundial
The shadows.
But in the night,
in the night.
With the
Stars,
with the,
moon.
With where the moon was.
you could,
Location.
but there's an easier way to do that.
I'm sure there is. What fun is that?
Yeah, I know.
Burn incense.
Huh?
Burn an incense.
Candles.
Oh,
Burn
candles.
candles. They made in China, specific in China, they made candles that each hour you would burn a segment of the candle that would burn. That's actually a good achievement to be able to incentivize, standardize that it 1 hour, just one segment of the candle burns. Okay? They were very good at that. Another thing is water. That you make a water that, and then this is practically the monks and the church did, that they put a big bowl and in a small hole that drip by drip, because you can synchronize that, and then water comes, and when the first vessel is filled is 1 hour, and then it overflows to the next,
That's really cute.
to the next. It is cute.
But what
The
about
problem.
evaporation?
Here you are.
Friction. Water. Yeah, I had that first thought.
It is not
Yeah,
accurate.
that was my first thought.
It is not accurate. It's good enough to counting hours, It's not accurate enough to count anything beyond that.
Yeah, because like in California, it's so much more dry than it is in Florida.
If you use that to run the trains, you will have an accident.
Yeah, you'd
So
have
you
some
better you
problems.
don't use that for running. So, but it is good enough to say it's time for prayer. Stand up and do your prayer.
They took that same concept and we use it almost every single day when they have the timer, the sand timers,
Yeah,
the
right.
hourglass. We use that for simple things like board games.
I have
Or,
a giant
you know,
one.
we set a timer on, you know, to run tests and whatnot.
Yeah,
it's the
cooking.
same concept, just advanced.
You can actually do that up to minutes, but then beyond that, it becomes less accurate. Okay?
Correct. I'd agree.
So they did that, and it was good enough for another almost 1,000 years until we had trains that you had to be synchronized and you had to agree on a time, and then you had to make sure that you're not having catastrophe. And then it becomes the industrialized time, meaning that we weren't agriculture anymore. We had to be in a factory that the machine works at certain rate, and you are in trouble if you wouldn't synchronize them. You can imagine that you have two different gears that are not synchronized, and one to send you thing at certain rate, and then so on and so on. I'm sure everybody can imagine that that's a trouble if you are not synchronized to the second at least there. Now, and by the way, the concept of a week having 7 days is as well has something to do with the industrialization. Okay? Because before that, as a matter of fact, that the reason that we didn't always have 7 days in a week. We used to have, every place had a different one, but the church, the Emperor Constantine synchronized that, say a week is 7 days and that's it. And that concept as well came from Babylonians, who then gave it to the Hebrews when they were in the slavery in Babylonian. And then that was their reason not to be too much of a slave in Babylonia. Say, that is our religion, we cannot work that day, and so on. And so they got away with that. And then it was literally was official with Constantine. And then when we become industrialized, literally the religious reason was that, you know, one day you have to be off. That is was, but then we developed the concept of weekend. How long do you think the concept of weekend exists even? How long do we have weekends?
At least 25 years.
No, no, you have
I
25
was
years.
thinking not for that long.
No, but
For the concept of weekend, did you ask how long a weekend is?
no, well, you know, we consider weekend 2 days, right? Saturday and Sunday.
But it used to be just Sunday.
No, there was no weekend. It was just Sunday. But then
you
in
couldn't even do anything. Like you couldn't even ride your horse on Sundays. I thought like
that was a good idea. I think we over the ages we developed the idea that if we have a 1 day of a week as a resting day, we can perform better. Okay, but that 1 day of a week off was just 1 day of a week. It wasn't the weekend. It was just 1 day off.
yeah.
The concept of the weekend actually started in 1870s after the Civil War, where the reason it started is actually very interesting. So they have England industrialized everything. So people go and work there. They work their ass off. A shift was 12 hours. You guys are concerned. Now you guys think you're working hard. They would work 6 days a week, 12-hour shift. And then their life was so miserable. So what would they do at the weekend?
Drink too much.
Exactly. They would drink too much, and then Monday
They're bad.
it was horrible. Accident would happen. They were hangover and so on. So what they started, they noticed to prevent that, why don't we let them go home Saturday at 2 p.m. and drink Saturday, sleep over Sunday, and Monday be back and have less accident. That actually started a paper in something that called that concept weekend. And then first in 1908, I believe, a mill in somewhere in New England allowed people to stay 2 days off because they had lots of Jewish worker, and what they allowed them for them to keep Sabbath, allowed them to have 2 days off. And then first in 19 38 or so, the concept that become a law through unions and so on, that you work 40 hours or so, and then you have 2 days off. So these are all new concepts.
Yeah, I had the feeling that it was kind of recent just because of how the older generation is. Like, they think you should just slave away and this and
What?
that.
What?
But
Slave
Like
away.
my grandpa.
I say, but on the other side of things, you have to think about how long ago it was that women were able to work
Right.
full-time jobs.
That's a good point.
Because at that time, well, yeah, slaving away for 60 hours a week, yeah, that does sound like a lot, but at the same time, it was almost acceptable or expected that
Yeah.
the man in the house would work 60 hours and the woman would also be working those 60 hours at
Yeah.
home, just doing other
House
things.
stuff.
Other things.
Now,
yeah.
if you were to take that, divide it by 2, and you do the woman doing a 30-hour week and the man doing a 30-hour week, that's still less than probably the average
That's a good
American
point.
household put together now.
Yeah. Now, so, but we come to the time, we talked about the calendar, we talked about the month, we talked about the week. No, we talked about hours, but we still haven't talked about minute and second. So, why is the second called the second? What is about second? What's the first?
It was a second thought. That's why they thought the minute was great, and they're like, we need more specifics, and so they put it on the back burner. They came back to it and called it a second.
I
That's
like that.
the
Good one,
answer.
good one,
I
good
think
one.
that's it.
So,
End
okay,
here.
Misha, why is the second called the second?
I think Alyssa's
Yep.
explanation is great. Like
Yeah.
Thank you.
second thought,
Doesn't,
But-
doesn't
but-
the word
And then
second
you're done with the podcast now. We got off the
But-
explanation.
but
Happy
I'm like,
Thanksgiving.
why it's millisecond, not a millisecond? Why doesn't we call it a third?
We don't need more
So,
stuff.
And
No.
that's- I
Doesn't a second take 1 second to say, actually?
no, that's not the
But-
reason it's called second.
I
Second.
thought it did. I
One
thought I learned
Mississippi,
that.
2 Mississippi.
Hamid saying
One
second
second.
and Misha saying second.
Okay.
True.
So it started that we needed more smaller section of time because we have to be more accurate with this synchronization.
Yeah.
But that started long time ago before industrialization. And what we use the Earth and rotation of the Earth as a 1 day. We divide it by 24 hours, 12 day hours, 12 night hours. Once we needed more, and Earth rotates, every hour is 15 degree of rotation of the Earth. 15 degree, right? Then we put those 15 degrees even smaller, like in a circle. What do you call a fraction of a degree? What's the smaller thing of a degree in a circle when you do geometry? What do you call that? Minute and second.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, right?
Oh yeah.
So the minute is the first under section of a degree, and the second is the second under section degree. So the first division or first subsection and second subsection. And the Latin words for the minute was different. We took a different part of that, but for the second we took the first part of the Latin name for that. So we came from hours to minutes and the seconds. Okay, so and the reason there are 60 is because because that was something that we could subdivide it easier in geometry. So that is how we came to the first subsection of the degree and second subsection of the degree. So this is now we made it to hours, minute, and the second, which has all to do with the rotation of the Earth. But did you know a second is not a second? It's not the same. If you use we things, now eventually they came together. They said, "What is the subsection? What? Is it too much history for you?"
Getting really deep.
No, they divided the day eventually, but then when our clocks become accurate, we notice that every day is different. It's not the same. So they took an average day.
She's laughing at his face. I can't hold it together. I just hear her in my ear like
It was the motivation he was giving us.
every day is different.
It's true, but every day literally,
Yeah.
physically is
It's
different.
different and it feels different too.
Yeah, and feels different too.
Yeah, it gets getting colder.
Yep.
Yeah.
And some days feel a lot longer than other days.
So for everybody who watched that, you see who's a nerd and who's a normal person, because
Normal.
Thank you.
because for me, it is all about the fascination with how did we decide how long a second is, and we will talk about it in our essence of science.
Okay.
But
Deal.
in 1970s, finally we could measure more accurate than the nature.
In the 70s?
1970s, yeah. We had atomic clock that they were accurate enough to measure it. Then lots of people from around the world came together. They decided that in average, for now, this amount of time is a second. And they based it on something that will never ever change and will be eternal. So we freed our time from the rotation of the Earth. So even in 2 billion years, when our day is like 26 or 27 hours, and the moon is different and the sun is different, our second will be still the same. Why? How are we measuring seconds now? It has nothing to do anymore with the rotation of the Earth, and that has been a revolution to be able to measure the time without celestial motion.
Does that have to do with it being a fraction of a minute, and a minute being a fraction of
No,
an hour?
second is actually defined by a physical thing. You mentioned that. You remember something about atomic something?
Like
Atomic clock?
yeah,
That-
atomic
that's-
clock. That
That's all Misha.
Okay. No, you mentioned
Mine
that too.
is secondhand on the
Okay.
second thought.
What is the
it's like some kind of atom. Like it buzzed 200 times. Like the time it took
200 times?
226. No.
Yeah. That is quartz.
Oh.
Good enough, but we can do so much better. So much better. An atom is a nucleus with positive charge and electron with negative charge. If you throw electromagnetic wave at it, it starts oscillating. You can observe that oscillation, you can measure it. You're not going to go on the bottom of that because and if you think Amanda is already oversaturated, let me try to explain how the atomic clock works. Okay, so
Can be in our essence of
science, yeah.
Yeah.
So you can measure it. Cesium atom. We use
Yeah.
cesium
Yeah.
atom,
Cesium.
and we throw an electromagnetic wave of a certain length on it, and we see how it's coming back, so we can measure how it oscillates. We can measure that oscillation up to how many oscillation of the cesium atom make a second? About 10 billion oscillation. So it's the actual number, okay? It's 10 million, that many thousand, and so on.
You want a fact check?
Yeah, check it out. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and that we decided that many oscillation of cesium atom is a second. And that can be replicated on the other side of the galaxy or universe, because physics is eternal. It's timeless. It is spaceless. It is without the geography, and literally, and that is now we have defined. Well, how about the second? Is everything else by definition, by practically we decided, we made it up, say, okay, this is a second, then 60 seconds is a minute, then 60 minutes is an hour, and 24 hours is a day. Because nature, the earth doesn't like that. Every year we have to add a fraction of a second to our atomic clock to keep it all consistent. So did you fact check it?
Yep.
Tell me, how many oscillation of cesium atom is a second?
It's kind of long. I'm still looking for it.
10 to the 16th power?
No, it's the accuracy.
That's the
Accuracy of uncertainty.
how many what?
How many oscillation of the cesium atom in an atomic clock make a second? So just look for definition of a second. Look, just easy, make it easy. Definition of a second, or physical definition of a second.
Want to read this?
You look for it and
Alyssa has a good reading voice.
Constituting number 2 in a sequence, coming after the first in time or order.
Oh.
Second. That's what you wanted me to read?
Never mind.
Okay.
Second,
Guys,
as in not first.
physical definition.
by
Physical
Amanda.
definition of a
Second,
second.
the time that elapses during.
Right here.
Yeah,
nine.
that's what I
billion.
mean.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
So no, you have better
We got
voice.
this.
Go.
Okay, the second is an international system of units of time of measurement. 1 second is the time that elapses during 9,192,631,770
Or-
cycle, or 9.19 times 10 to the 9th place in decimal form.
That's what you were looking for,
That's the
right?
difference. Yeah.
So a little over 9 billion.
About 10 billion. Let's just
Let's
round
go
it
with
up.
10 billion.
10 billion. Okay. So
Wow.
then that was the history of time.
And speaking of time, I think we're all out.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it has been 1 hour.
Yes.
Exactly. We spent 1 hour here. But I hope in this 1 hour you learned a lot of concept that make you just smarter. What was your logo?
The smartest podcast in the world.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank
Happy
you, everybody.
for watching.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Eat up.